Hello, there was a recent debate that FTFE had with a globe slayer. Check for a card right about here that will take you to that debate. And at around the 53 or 54-minute mark, or thereabouts, FTFE said this right here.
That video that you presented, I have just tested and disagrees with your assertion that there's a change in angular size. I would suggest re-analyzing your evidence, redoing it, and counting the pixels as you do it to make sure that you aren't accidentally cropping or changing the size when you put them next to each other. Again, I'm not accusing you of doing anything. I'm just saying that I just tested your evidence, and anybody can do it for themselves. And in fact, I encourage people to do it for themselves. I see the link to the video has been posted in my chat by Desert File. Thank you very much. So if anyone wants to go and test the claim that Globe Slayer has just made, I encourage them to do it as I have just done. And when you do it, you will find it doesn't hold up to scrutiny and the angular size doesn't change.
And I thought that would be a very wonderful thing to do. So that's the URL. I'll put another card right about here. So I thought that I was going to do my own bit of analysis on this video to see what I could find. So the first thing that I wanted to do was not to rely on what I saw on the screen, but rather I wanted access to the original video. And I extracted all of the individual frames. And I created this spreadsheet right here, which I will link in the description below, along with the links to those two other videos. The size that I ended up getting was the 720p. So there's the height. The width was 1088. If you look at the description, it's basically the same sunset repeated 3 times, once at 30 frames a second, once at 15, and once at 10. So I only concentrated on the first part of the video, which would be right around here somewhere, and happened to start at frame 202, and the last one was frame 358. I didn't want to go and look at all of the individual frames, so starting with the first one, I skipped every 30 frames and I loaded each of those individually into GIMP so that I could then let GIMP tell me that this pixel here is 954 on the x-axis, which I put right here. The top pixel is 97, which is right here. Then I did the same thing for this one on the right, which was 981 right here. And then finally the one on the bottom was 124, which was this one. I didn't include this one, although I might have been able to include this one. So I ended up putting the bounding pixels for the sun in this one, and then in this one, etc., etc., etc. I wanted to find out how wide and how high the sun was in each of those frames. So it's just a bit of simple math. So when this time lapse began, the sun was 27 pixels wide and 27 pixels high. Then second frame, it was still the same width, but now the height was 1 pixel less, then 2 pixels, and then you get the idea. And then as time went on, the last few, the sun was just being obstructed too much. But even at this one, which was well beyond the image that Globe Slayer was looking at, it was 25 by 21. Here you can actually see the atmosphere starting to compress the sun vertically, but not nearly as much horizontally. So doing a little bit more math and a few more calculations, I've essentially calculated the center position of where the sun should be, extrapolating all of these other frames between the two key frames that I was looking at. Then I wrote a very simple script that took these values here and using the command line ImageMagick tools, which I think I will make a copy available as well. So once again, check the description. Given these values, it would use the convert tool to crop, to resize, and to create new images that I could then overlay, and this is what I'm going to show here. Keeping in mind that I've only looked at 1 in every 30 frames, and as you can see, the sun is drifting slightly off and then coming back, but in the end, it's off by 1 or 2 or 3 pixels. It at least gives you a good enough idea of what's going on. And I was a little bit surprised to see that the sun was still shrinking when in reality, it only lost a couple of pixels between the first and the last really good usable one that I could look at. So here I had a bit of a mystery, and I wanted to figure out what exactly might have been causing it. Was it the solar filter that wolfie6020 was using? Was it the camera that was inappropriately setting the exposure level based on the diminishing light, and as a result wasn't able to capture the full brightness of the sun around the edges? Was it due to the compression before it was uploaded to YouTube, or was it YouTube itself? So what I did was I ended up writing a very simple little Java application that would end up creating a mock sunset with a very specific size for the sun, and it would guarantee that the rendered sun was going to be the exact same dimensions, whether it was at the top or at the bottom like this. I'm going to leave links to all of these various resources. I might actually just end up zipping everything into a zip file. So check the description below for a link to a zip file that will contain a copy of the original images that you see here like this. I then used those images to create a short video. I then uploaded it to YouTube, let YouTube do its thing, and then I downloaded the resulting video from YouTube back to my computer, and I re-extracted all of the individual frames, and I was able to compare them with some very interesting results. This was the original size generated by my app. It was 1920 by 1080. You can see that all of the edges are jagged. After it was rendered and it came back from YouTube, you can see that there are a few spots that are not quite white. They've started to turn a little gray. I'll just toggle a few times so you can see it. And if I look at the sunset, it's even more telling, because now you can definitely see a fringe going on around the entire disk that I had generated. So there is definitely some video compression going on where the tool that generates the video is sacrificing detail for saving a few bits, if you will. And I just noticed something here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to insert 3 separate images. The first is the original. The second is a still of the same frame from the video that I created to send to YouTube. And then the third is going to be the image that came back from YouTube. And you can see that in each step along the way, there is a little bit more deterioration in the original detail. If I come back to the image from Wolfie's video and I pay attention to the size of the disk, I'm off by 2 pixels, or in other words, I'm off by 1 pixel from either side. And oddly enough, that coincides with what I'm seeing here when I compare the original before I created a video and sent to YouTube compared to how it came back from YouTube. You could easily see that somewhere along the way, 1 pixel around the edge of the sun could have disappeared, and thus if you wanted to count pixels, you could say that the sun appears to be getting smaller. Another thing that I noticed, if you look at the aspect ratio of FTFE's video versus wolfie6020's video, this one seems to be a little bit more 4:3 than 16:9. And my guess is that the original video that wolfie6020 generated and uploaded to YouTube was the original size of the images that came off of the camera, which might have been 2,000 or 3,000 pixels wide. When I compare the same video that I had uploaded at 1920 by 1080 that YouTube then downscaled to 1280 by 720, you can see that on that same first image that I compared here at the original size, the video that they generated at 1280 by 720, in other words, when they had downscaled the image to a smaller size, they applied dithering around the edge, and now the edge is no longer nice and sharp white, but a little bit more grayscale compared to the original that I downscaled to match the same size. So this layer is the original that I generated downscaled to this size. And the effect is even more noticeable on this frame, which is near the end. It appears that it could be several pixels smaller than it really is. So in summary, using videos on YouTube as evidence for one thing or another is a very tenuous thing and doesn't hold nearly as much weight as you think it might. I would say with a reasonably good amount of confidence that if I could look at the original images as they were taken from the cameras directly before any video compression, and I counted the diameter of the sun at the beginning in pixels, comparing it to the number of pixels in diameter at the end, horizontally, I would say that the pixels horizontally would be the same for the entire duration. Well, that's going to be it for now. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, you know what to do. And with that, I'll see you in another video at some point soon enough. So bye for now.